Cleveland, and welcome to Creative Focus, the show that illuminates some of Cleveland's most talented and creative artists across the genres of dance, film, music, theater, and visual arts. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I am thrilled to be at the Sha'Ran Studios, 12812 Larchmere Boulevard. Here, where it's a magical place, where confidence, creativity, and joy come together through dance. And I'm equally excited to have as my guest, the founder and director, Miss Sha'Ran Marshall. Sha'Ran, welcome to Creative Focus.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun.
My pleasure. So let's talk about how you got inspired in dance first. How did all that come about for you?
So the story is from my mother that I was around 8 years old and I would constantly sit the family down to watch me choreograph or this dance I made up. And at one point, the story then became, you were this great dancer, but you had no rhythm. And so around 8, 9 years old was my first stop to a dance studio, Daryl Jarvis in Toledo, Ohio.
And so they were your mentors?
Yes, and so I think for me, what made me stay and what made me love dance was my first dance teacher was a Black woman. And I just thought, wow, I could do this. And so it just had me in the studio all the time. I loved it and never stopped.
So take us through the transition from a dancer to a choreographer to owning your own business. How did all that transpire?
I had great mentors. And again, starting as a dancer, my first dance teacher actually had us, do coloring books, and we had to learn terminology. And then I got to be about 13 years old and started assisting, which then allowed me to see what teaching looks like. Then at 16, I was the first ballet total fitness hip hop teacher at the gym, and that allowed me to learn how to choreograph. From there, music was just so important to me. I love to hear it, I love to feel it, and that allowed me to choreograph and allowed me to think of ideas and put them down on paper, then put them to my body and teach others. From there, I taught at studios all over Cleveland when I first got here.
Because you're from Toledo, right?
Toledo, yes. But I think I can say Cleveland now, right? If I've been here 29 years.
Yeah, I'll let you go.
And so I had that opportunity to teach all over. And what I found was there was not a lot of little Black girls like me in the studio. And so that is what allowed me to go beyond teaching and choreographing and saying I want my own studio one day.
So what have some of the challenges been in owning your own studio and operating for you, would you say?
The challenging part is there's a lot of dance studios. And learning how you separate yourself and how you stand out from the other studios. Also, I think as artists, we are giving. We love to give back. We love to create. And we have this space of we would do it for free if we could. And so the challenge is how do you stay true to what you are, but then also make money doing it? And so I think for me, that's been the biggest challenge is just, staying true to myself, but then still being able to make money to build the brand and the business.
Why should I want to come to your studio to learn to dance? When you said there's so many to choose from.
I think for me, my big word is community. I think I've always been a space and I want to continue to be a space where everyone is welcomed. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner dancer. It doesn't matter if you're an advanced dancer. It doesn't matter if you feel like you have two left feet. I think for me, it's the attention that I give, the love that I give, and the cheerleader that I am for everybody that walks in the space.
Yeah, because the kids refer to you as a cheerleader, right? Now, you actually were an NBA cheerleader with the Cavaliers. How did all that come?
So I'm this little girl, and I said I want to be like Paula Abdul one day. And Paula Abdul danced for the Lakers.
Okay.
And so when I graduated from high school, I did a little bit of college and was like, this isn't working. And I actually went and tried out for the Laker girls. Was my first attempt. Made it all the way through the auditions to interviews. Didn't make it, and my aunt who lives here in Cleveland says, you should come try out for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're revamping, the program, and I think you have a good chance. So I came to Cleveland, I tried out for the Cavaliers, I made it, I moved to Cleveland, and it was great because the only sport that I really like is basketball, so it was kind of cool to be able to do what I do, and that's dance, but then also watch basketball at the same time.
Were you a basketball fan?
Basketball fan, indeed. I remember the coach at that time. I was the captain, and so I would have to lead cheers, start everybody off. And a lot of times I would be so focused on the game that the coach would be on the side going, Sha'Ran, start a cheer. So yes, I got best of both worlds with the dance and the sports.
Something that I found real interesting was the fact that you talk about dance, but you talk about confidence and you talk about joy. How do they intersect, and why is that so important?
Because I feel like dance tells the story. I feel like we go through these emotions in life, whether it be happiness, whether it be sadness, whether it be pain. And so I think for me, it all started for me to be able to tell a story through my movement. And then from there, I learned what it all meant, and then I was able to explain to others how this movement can make you feel joyful, how this movement can make you happy, how this movement could allow you to tell a story that maybe you couldn't physically speak on. And so I think it started with the dance, and then it was growing and learning the emotions that come with life, and then being able to share that with everyone around me.
Would you say that a person should be able to dance and move to any sort of music? Or would that be valid or no?
I say yes. I'm gonna rewind and say I believe that everyone can dance. And some may be better than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you put a piece of music to anyone's body, it allows them to create, and each person is going to be different. So the answer is yes, I think everyone can dance to a piece of music. It's just how they interpret it, and it is how the audience interprets it as well.
What is it about dance that makes you so passionate and interested in your craft, would you say?
I think longevity. I think it's undescribable. I mean, sometimes I want to cry. I just love it that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's brought me through so many stages of life. I remember one time our house caught on fire, and I had been at the studio, Daryl Jarvis, for a very long time. And I just remember that community coming together and saying, we're gonna find Sha'Ran some dance clothes because we know she wants to be here at the studio. And so I think that was kind of like a pivotal moment of like, this is a community, this is something that people can gravitate to and people love on you. And so I can talk about dance every day. It just brings me joy.
How much does dance and fitness, how do they intersect? Is that important?
Mm-hmm. It's important, and I will argue with someone till the roof comes off that dancers are athletes as well. Athletes can be dancers. And I think it's important that dancers also understand the fitness part of their body or their journey. I think in order to be a better dancer, you need to know about your body. And I think sometimes as fitness people, you need to know the concept of moving your feet and being able to be on timing and things like that. So I think they intersect. I think they work well together. I think they intertwine. And I think neither is better than the other.
And what about the mental health aspect
Mhm.
of dance, would you say?
There's actually studies that you can find right now that says dance is better than taking medication for depression. Dance allows people, again, to tell a story that maybe they can't speak on or they're scared to tell someone. I would say dance is, to me, probably your top one mental health distributor and way to cope with anything that you're going through.
Now, you also do a lot of work with children with disabilities, right? Talk about that in terms of dance or how you work that.
Mhm. I think it started with one, I'm just this energy, ball of energy, right?
Right.
A lot of my friends would tease me and call me Barney because I would always have this high pitch and I was just excited and just, and the kids would gravitate to me. So I think that's how it started. But then in 2013, I had a son who had a disability. He was born with lung disease, and it allowed me to learn so much about his illness, just the landscape of the hospitals and the care that he needed, that I found passion with that. And I also found that the love that I have for children, and now that I've learned all these things, I make sure every year that I am up to date with my BCI, my FBI. I take some disability classes so that I could really work with those children and then work with the parents on what their needs are. Yeah.
So do you take your programs to the schools at all?
Yeah. So we try to, bring the kids into the space, but then if that's not the possibility, we also have our instructors or myself visit schools, visit daycare programs, church programs, anywhere I can reach a mover, I'm going to go to them.
So how do you avoid burnout? Because I can tell you're a very energetic person. How do you avoid burnout and boredom in this business?
I think it's my faith. I think because I'm not going to lie to you, I do get burned out. But I think for me, is you can't stay down long, right? You just you get back up and you figure out what's the next best thing to get you going. And so I think with me, it's prayer. It's having really good friends around me, and then I think it's this God-given talent that I have and this gift, and it's like Sha'Ran, get up. I know you're tired today, but you have things to do. And I think that mentality is kind of what allows me to move from the burnout, but I definitely get it.
Was there a defining moment in your career so far? Something that had turned you more towards your craft? A moment?
Yeah, I think last year was a moment of I had created all these years of this business, of this brand. I kind of made myself a name in Cleveland, and it all went crashing down when I didn't have a space anymore. And so that allowed me to sit still. That allowed me to say, okay, Sha'Ran, how can you kind of switch or rebrand or elevate what you've already been doing, because you're going to always have these things coming at you, and how do you supersede past them. And so last year the studio was closed briefly, but it allowed me to sit still, it allowed me to research, it allowed me to learn a little bit more about business. And so I think that was the defining moment of things will happen, but your longevity plus a little bit more education and a little bit more mentorship around you would allow you to go even further.
For a dance studio, how do you measure success beyond monetary, would you say?
I'm gonna go back to longevity. I think what I really try to teach the younger people underneath me is yes, you can be good. Yes, you can be popular. Yes, you can be the biggest thing out there. But how long have you been in the business? How long can you be in the business? And how many people can count on you to stay in the business and to be able to continue doing what you're doing? So I would say longevity, but then just really having the passion for what you're doing and having the belief in yourself, even though people are going to, recommend things or ask you to change things, and just really having a stern foot to say, this is what I believe, this is what I'm passionate about, and this is what I'm here to do.
What are some of the best advice you've gotten in terms of dance and running a studio or your career? Maybe from a mentor or someone?
Best advice would be from my mother, would be the first one, and she's constantly always telling me to walk by faith. And then my next would be my dad, who is like this gentle soul, but at the same time, he'll be like, all right, it happened, so get up, okay, what are you gonna do next? And then I just have some really good friends who are just kind of like my cheerleader, right? That, Sha'Ran, you are doing a great job, keep doing it. And I think my boys, I have 3 boys that, as a mom, as a single mom, sometimes we're like, we have to do these things. But all these years, my boys are always like, do your thing, and then they also kind of come in with me as well, to kind of root me on and kind of, dance with me when they can. So
The dancers too?
They were. I think they all started out dancing, and then as they got older, they were like, okay, we want to get more into sports. But there's always a moment as a family where I'm like, come on, y'all, let's do this. And then, okay. And so I think just being true to yourself and having people in your corner that allow you to be yourself.
And you're also a motivational speaker, right? What topics are your forte when you step on stage and that spotlight is on you? Or do you have one? Or can you just, talk about anything, converse about anything?
I think I can talk about anything,
Okay.
but I think for me, if I were to ask to step on stage right now and what could you motivate people about? And for me, I think it would be faith. I think it would be getting up every day. I think it would be having rituals that you do in the morning or throughout the day. And just, I think just, believing in God. Because, there's going to be days where you're just like, I can't do it. But, just stopping for a second and allowing Him to say, okay, move forward.
Now, how did motivational speaking become part of your resume? How did that happen?
Because I like to talk. I think what happened was, so about 4 years ago, when I moved the studio to Shaker, the Van Aken district was right across the street from me. And so oftentimes, I would have a show and, being the owner of the studio, I would do all the speaking. And so one day they came to me and they were like, can you just speak to all the events and be like the speaker and the hype girl? And so they would have different bands come and I would be like the hype person, or I would introduce people. And so I would say probably about 2 years ago, I finally put on my resume, I'm a speaker,
Okay.
And so whether that be motivating, whether that be the hype girl, whether that be introducing people, or just talking about my brand, I think, it can be a comedy show in that, I like to talk a lot, but I think a lot of times I get a lot of things that need to be said across to the audience.
In closing,
Yes.
what do you hope your legacy will be? Miss Marshall.
I think my legacy is twofold in that obviously I want to leave my children with the legacy of this great mom and this great business person that left them with a name that when people speak of, they're proud of. And then I think as far as the community or Cleveland or Toledo is that, I'm this little Debbie Allen in a Sha'Ran Marshall way, and that I left the city with so much joy and so much happiness, and everybody wants to get up and dance any and all the time, because it allows them to be joyful in their everyday life.
Well spoken.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show, man. It's been a blast.
Yes.
Sha'Ran Marshall reminds us that dance isn't just about movement. It's about confidence, creativity, and joy. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for TV 20. We are Cleveland and Creative Focus. Until the next time becomes our time. Be well. Be safe.